The irony of being a broke graphic designer with a billionaire grandfather wasn't lost on me. Most mornings, I'd wake up in my cramped San Francisco apartment to the sound of my roommate Olivia's ancient coffee maker sputtering to life, wondering how I'd stretch my paycheck to cover both rent and student loan payments that month. "Breakfast of champions," Olivia announced, sliding a plate of slightly burned toast across our scratched kitchen table. She was already dressed for her shift at the hospital. Scrubs wrinkled but clean. "You're a lifesaver," I mumbled, reaching for my coffee. The apartment was freezing. We kept the heat low to save money, and the ceramic mug warmed my hands. "How'd the Bridgewater pitch go yesterday?" she asked, leaning against the counter. I grimaced. They loved the concept but went with someone cheaper. Lauren Whitfield, granddaughter of Samuel Prescott, eating toast crusts and losing clients to budget designers. She shook her head. "It's like some twisted Dickens novel." "The Prescott part doesn't count," I reminded her, tying my hair into a messy bun. The family wealth skipped a generation in my direction. My mother, Susan Carter, had married beneath her station, according to gossip columns, when she fell for my father, Daniel. The family scandal was ancient history now, but the dynamics remained frozen in time. My grandfather, tech magnate and venture capitalist Samuel Prescott, maintained a cool distance from our branch of the family tree while showering attention on my cousin Chloe and her investment banker husband. "Your parents still driving that new Tesla?" Olivia asked, eyebrows raised. I nodded, swallowing a bite of toast. "Mom sent pictures from their anniversary trip to Santorini last week. But they can't help with your rent?" This was familiar territory. "They believe in self-sufficiency," I recited, the words hollow after years of repetition. "Struggle builds character, Lauren. You'll thank us one day." "While they live in a 5-bedroom house in Palo Alto," Olivia said flatly. I shrugged, gathering my portfolio and laptop. "Some people get trust funds. I got life lessons." "Those life lessons better come with dental, because your wisdom tooth is still bothering you," she called as I headed for the door. "I'll make another payment this month," I promised, both to her and myself. My commute to the co-working space I rented downtown took 40 minutes by bus. I could have called a rideshare, but those extras added up quickly when you were counting pennies. The irony wasn't lost on me that my cousin Chloe probably spent more on coffee each month than I made in a week. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother as I settled into my workspace. "Don't forget, we're hosting your 28th birthday dinner next Friday. Reservations at Accarello at 7. Wear something nice." I stared at the message, mental calculations running. A dinner at Accarello would cost more than my monthly food budget. Before I could respond, another text followed. "We insist. It's been too long since we had a proper family celebration." I typed back, "Mom, I can't afford that right now. Still waiting on 3 clients to pay invoices." Her response was immediate. "Don't be silly, we're paying. Consider it your birthday gift." Something about their sudden generosity felt off, but I pushed the thought away. Parents were allowed to splurge on their only daughter's birthday, weren't they? Even parents who typically lectured about fiscal responsibility while booking first-class flights to Europe. Lauren, Earth to Lauren. I glanced up to find Jake, the UX designer who worked at the desk across from mine, waving a hand in front of my face. "Sorry," I said, putting my phone away. "Family stuff." "No worries. Listen, Nexus Digital is looking for someone to overhaul their brand identity. I mentioned your work to their creative director." He slid a business card across the desk. "They're paying real money, not startup equity or exposure." My heart leapt. A contract with Nexus could cover months of expenses. "Jake, you're amazing," he grinned. "Buy me a coffee when you're rich and famous." "Deal," I laughed, already planning my pitch. The following week passed in a blur of deadlines and late nights. The Nexus pitch consumed my every waking hour. This wasn't just another gig. It could be my breakthrough. By Thursday, I had created a comprehensive brand presentation that showcased my best work. Friday morning, I was ready. I dressed in my one decent suit, thrifted but tailored, and headed downtown for the meeting. My phone rang as I approached the Nexus building. "Lauren Whitfield," I answered, trying to sound professional despite my nerves. "Lauren, it's Martin from Nexus." The creative director's voice was apologetic. "I need to reschedule our meeting. Something's come up with one of our major accounts." My stomach dropped. "Of course, I understand. When would you like to reschedule?" "I'll have my assistant call you next week." His tone didn't inspire confidence. "Thank you. I look forward to it," I said, maintaining professionalism even as disappointment flooded through me. I wandered to a nearby park bench, deflated. It was my birthday. I had a fancy dinner to attend that evening, and my big opportunity had just evaporated. As if on cue, my phone pinged with an email notification from my supervisor at the design agency where I worked part-time. The message was brief and devastating. Due to budget cuts, they were eliminating all contractor positions, effective immediately. My stomach clenched. Just like that, half my income was gone. I called Olivia, my voice shaking. They cut my position, and Nexus postponed the pitch meeting. "Oh, Lauren, I'm so sorry." Her voice was warm with genuine concern. "What can I do?" "Nothing," I sighed. "I still have to go to this ridiculous birthday dinner tonight and pretend everything's fine. My parents would have a field day if they knew I lost my job. Maybe you should cancel, take some time to process, and listen to my mother explain how my poor career choices led to this." "No thanks." I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Besides, they're paying, which means they'll probably send me home with leftovers. Free food is free food. "Text me if you need an emergency escape call," Olivia offered. "You're the best," I said, meaning it. That evening, I arrived at Acquerello in a black dress I'd bought years ago for a college formal. I'd styled my hair in loose waves and applied makeup carefully to hide the dark circles under my eyes. The maitre d' escorted me to a private dining room where my parents waited, both impeccably dressed and radiating the confident ease that comes with wealth. "Happy birthday, darling." My mother rose to embrace me, her perfume expensive and familiar. She held me at arm's length. "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" "I'm fine, Mom," I said, accepting a kiss on the cheek from my father. "Our girl's working hard," he said, pride in his voice, "building her own path just like we taught her." I swallowed the bitter retort that rose in my throat. If only they knew that the path they were so proud of had just crumbled beneath my feet. We ordered drinks, my parents insisting on champagne despite my protests. They seemed unusually tense, exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked. "Of course, sweetheart," my mother replied too quickly. "We're just excited about some news we'll be sharing later." "News?" My suspicion grew. "What kind of news?" Before they could answer, the door to the private dining room swung open. I turned, expecting to see our server with appetizers. Instead, my grandfather, Samuel Prescott, stood in the doorway, his imposing figure commanding the room instantly. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, his suit impeccably tailored, his expression unreadable. My parents froze. "Samuel," my father stammered, rising halfway from his seat. "We weren't expecting you." My grandfather's eyes, sharp and clear despite his 70-plus years, fixed on me. "Happy birthday, Lauren," he said, his voice surprisingly warm. "I thought it was time I attended a family celebration." As he took the empty seat beside me, I noticed my mother's knuckles whitening around her champagne flute. Something was very, very wrong. I just didn't know yet that my entire life was about to change. The server arrived with appetizers, seemingly oblivious to the tension crackling through our private dining room. My grandfather ordered a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent, then turned his attention fully to me. "Tell me about your work, Lauren," he said, ignoring my parents entirely. I hesitated, aware of my mother's warning glance. My relationship with Samuel Prescott had always been distant, limited to formal holiday greetings and the occasional brief appearance at family events. His sudden interest felt jarring. "I'm a graphic designer," I said cautiously. "Freelance, mostly, with some agency work. And you enjoy it?" His piercing gaze was disconcerting, as if he could see through the polite facade to the financial disaster currently unfolding in my life. "I love the creative aspects," I answered honestly, "though the business side can be challenging." My father cleared his throat. "Lauren's very talented. She just needs more time to establish herself in the industry." Samuel raised an eyebrow but didn't respond directly. Instead, he addressed me again. "Where are you living these days?" "I have an apartment in the Mission District," I said, "with a roommate." "The Mission?" My grandfather frowned slightly. "Isn't that area still somewhat rough?" My mother jumped in. "It's gentrified considerably, Samuel. Quite the artistic community now." "Still," he persisted, "I would have expected you to be in a more established neighborhood by now." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I pushed my appetizer around the plate, appetite diminishing. "San Francisco real estate is expensive," I finally said, trying to keep my tone light, "even with roommates." Samuel's expression shifted subtly. "Indeed. though I was under the impression that housing wasn't a concern for you. My parents exchanged another look, this one tinged with something that looked remarkably like fear. What do you mean? I asked, confusion growing. The server returned to clear our appetizer plates and present the main course. My grandfather waited until we were alone again before continuing. I have been reflecting lately, he said, swirling wine in his glass, about family, legacy, the choices we make. His eyes flicked, briefly to my parents. I realized I've been remiss in not taking a more active interest in your life, Lauren. That's thoughtful of you, I said, unsure where this was heading. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Then, raising his glass in a toast, he smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. So, how's the apartment? Comfortable? The question hung in the air, oddly specific and weighted with meaning I couldn't decipher. I froze, my heart suddenly racing without obvious cause. What apartment? I whispered, the words escaping before I could analyze his meaning. The restaurant seemed to go silent. Crystal clinked as my parents' forks slipped from their hands. My mother's face turned pale. My father's jaw clenched as if the air itself had betrayed them. Samuel's smile vanished, his voice sharpening into ice as he turned his piercing gaze on them. If she never received it, then who took the money I paid? My glass nearly slipped from my fingers. I don't understand. What money? What apartment? My grandfather's expression softened slightly when he looked at me, but his voice remained steel. The Pacific Heights apartment I purchased for your 26th birthday, and the trust fund I established when you graduated college. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself as his words rewrote my reality. Trust fund? I echoed faintly. Samuel's eyes narrowed dangerously as he turned to my parents. You told me she wanted to maintain her independence, that she appreciated the apartment but preferred to keep her own place for work purposes. You said she was using the trust sensibly, investing most of it. My father's face had gone ashen. Samuel, this isn't the place. Then where is the place, Daniel? My grandfather's voice, though quiet, cut like a blade. Where exactly would you prefer to explain why my granddaughter is struggling paycheck to paycheck when I provided her with millions? Millions? The word escaped me in a strangled gasp. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Lauren, darling, we can explain. I pulled away, my mind racing through years of memories. The nights I'd worked until dawn to make rent, the dental work I'd postponed because I couldn't afford it, the constant stress of financial insecurity, all while my parents lived in luxury, took lavish vacations, drove expensive cars. You told me struggle builds character, I whispered, the familiar phrase turning to ash in my mouth. It does, sweetheart, my mother insisted, desperation in her eyes. We were protecting you from becoming entitled, dependent. By stealing from me? The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. My father straightened, finding his composure. It wasn't stealing. We were managing your inheritance until you were mature enough to handle it responsibly. She's nearly 30, Samuel said coldly. When exactly were you planning to inform her of her wealth? Or were you hoping I'd die first, leaving no one to question where the money went? The server appeared again, noted the tension, and quietly retreated without a word. This is all a misunderstanding, my father insisted, though his confidence was visibly cracking. My grandfather pulled out his phone. My attorney is on his way with the original trust documents. Perhaps you'd care to explain the misunderstanding to him as well? Or shall we discuss the properties purchased in your names using Lauren's trust as collateral? The investment accounts? The vacation home in Tahoe? My mother began to cry silently, mascara tracking down her carefully powdered cheeks. The reality of what they'd done crashed over me in waves. Not only had they hidden my inheritance, they'd actively used it to fund their lifestyle, all while watching me struggle, miss opportunities, and sacrifice my health and well-being. How could you? I asked, my voice barely audible. We were going to tell you, my mother pleaded. Soon. That's why we planned this dinner. My grandfather scoffed. Because my assistant mentioned I was reviewing the trust accounts, no doubt. My father's expression confirmed this theory instantly. How much? I asked, looking directly at my grandfather. How much was the trust worth? Initially, $5 million, he answered without hesitation. With proper management and the returns from my fund, it should be worth considerably more now. $5 million. The number was incomprehensible. With that money, I could have started my own design firm, bought a home, lived without the constant anxiety of financial instability. And the apartment? A 3-bedroom on Pacific Avenue. Purchase price was just under $4 million 3 years ago. I felt dizzy, disconnected from reality. While I'd been counting quarters for laundry, millions of dollars sat in accounts my parents controlled. Money meant for me, for my future. "We've made excellent investments with the funds," my father began, his businessman persona emerging despite the circumstances. "The returns have been—" "Stop!" My voice was surprisingly steady. "Just stop talking." To my shock, he did. My grandfather signaled to the maitre d', who appeared instantly. "We'll need the private room for a bit longer, and perhaps some water for my granddaughter." As the man hurried away, Samuel turned to me, his expression softening for the first time. "I should have checked on you directly. I trusted your parents to honor our agreement. That was my mistake." "Why now?" I asked. "Why, did you never reach out before? Your parents insisted you wanted distance from family wealth, that you were determined to make your own way." A shadow passed over his face. I respected that choice, even admired it. I should have recognized the inconsistencies sooner. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Everything okay? Need that emergency call?" I stared at the screen, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. How could I possibly explain this? My parents stole millions from me seemed too outlandish to be real. Yet here we were, the truth exposed under crystal chandeliers. My birthday dinner transformed into the revelation that my entire adult life had been built on lies. The door opened again, and a sharply dressed older man entered carrying a leather portfolio. "Ms. Whitfield," he said with a respectful nod. "I'm Howard Dempsey, your grandfather's attorney. I believe we have some matters to discuss." As he spread documents across the table, I caught glimpses of numbers that made my head spin. Property deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios, all in my name, all managed without my knowledge or consent. My father made one last attempt. "Lauren, we only wanted what was best for you. What was best for me?" I finally found my voice, years of suppressed resentment breaking through. I skipped meals to pay rent. I couldn't afford to see a dentist. I lost sleep worrying about student loans. How was any of that best for me? The silence that followed was answer enough. As I looked at the strangers who had raised me, I realized the foundation of my life had crumbled beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about struggle, sacrifice, and family had been a carefully constructed lie, and I had no idea what would remain when the dust settled. The days following my birthday dinner passed in a surreal blur. I moved through them like a sleepwalker, disconnected from the reality I'd known just days before. Howard Dempsey, my grandfather's attorney, had taken immediate action that night, freezing accounts and initiating legal proceedings that made my head spin. I'd returned to my apartment in shock, unable to explain to Olivia what had happened. How could I tell her that while I'd been scraping by, millions of dollars sat in accounts with my name on them, money my parents had systematically siphoned away? "Lauren," Olivia's voice broke through my, thoughts. She stood in my bedroom doorway, concern etched across her face. "You haven't left your room in 2 days. What happened at that dinner?" I sat up in bed, pushing tangled hair from my face, the weight of the truth pressed against my chest, demanding release. "My parents stole from me," I said finally, the words strange in my mouth. "Millions of dollars. A trust fund and an apartment my grandfather set up for me years ago." Her eyes widened. "What?" "My entire adult life. The struggle, the stress, working through pneumonia last winter because I couldn't afford time off. It was all unnecessary." My laugh sounded hollow. "Turns out I'm an heiress. Or I was supposed to be." Olivia crossed the room and sat beside me, her weight dipping the mattress. "Jesus, Lauren, I don't even know what that is." "Criminal," I supplied. "It's criminal. Theft, fraud, misappropriation of funds. Howard has a whole list of charges they could face. Are you going to press charges?" The question hung in the air. I'd been avoiding it since that night, dodging calls from both the attorney and my grandfather. My parents had called and texted relentlessly until I blocked their numbers. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to see them in handcuffs, but they're still my parents." My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Normally I'd ignore it, assuming another client canceling a project, but now I wondered if it was Howard or my grandfather using a different line. "Hello? Lauren, it's Chloe." My cousin's voice was tentative, missing its usual confident edge. I heard, "What happened? Can we meet?" Chloe Blake, the golden child of the family, showered with opportunities and privileges while I scraped by. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. "When? Are you free now? I'm at Ritual Coffee on Valencia." 20 minutes later, I slid into a chair across from Chloe. She looked immaculate as always, designer sunglasses pushed back into perfect. Honey blonde hair, cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent, but her expression was uncharacteristically somber. "Thank you for coming," she said, pushing a latte toward me. "I ordered your usual." I didn't ask how she knew my coffee preference. "What do you want, Chloe?" She flinched slightly at my tone. I wanted to say I'm sorry, and that I didn't know. Not the full extent. Anyway, what does that mean? She twisted a diamond tennis bracelet around her wrist. I knew Uncle Daniel and Aunt Susan lived extravagantly, beyond what his investment consulting should afford. There were whispers, but she looked up, meeting my eyes. "I had no idea they were stealing from you specifically. Would it have mattered if you'd known?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Lauren, we're not close, but you're family. What they did was wrong." I studied her face, searching for insincerity, but finding none. "Why are you here, Chloe? Guilt by association?" "Partly," she admitted. "And because grandfather asked me to check on you. He's worried you're avoiding him because you blame him too." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it resonated. Part of me did blame Samuel for his absence, for trusting my parents without verification, for not reaching out to me directly over the years. "He should have checked," I said, voicing the thought aloud. "He's supposedly this brilliant businessman, but he never once verified that I received what he gave me." "You're right," Chloe nodded. "He knows that. He's devastated, Lauren. I've never seen him like this." I took a sip of the latte, buying time. "What happens now? With my parents?" "That depends on you," she said carefully. "Grandfather won't push for charges if you don't want them filed. But your parents' assets have been frozen while Howard's team traces what belongs to you. So they're broke?" "Essentially. The house in Palo Alto was purchased using your trust as collateral. Same with the vacation, property, and most of their investments." I leaned back, processing this information. The thought of my parents suddenly facing financial ruin stirred complicated emotions. Despite everything, I couldn't summon pure satisfaction at their downfall. "Did they say anything to you?" I asked. "Try to explain?" Chloe shook her head. "They're not speaking to anyone in the family right now. Howard says they've hired their own attorney." Of course they had. My father would approach this like any other business problem. A situation to be managed, damage to be controlled. "Lauren, there's something else," Chloe said, lowering her voice. "Howard's investigation uncovered some concerning transactions in your father's business accounts. Large withdrawals to offshore accounts in the Caymans." My stomach dropped. "He's hiding money?" "It looks that way. They might be planning to flee if criminal charges seem likely." The idea that my parents would not only steal from me but then attempt to escape consequences entirely ignited something fierce inside me. "I need to see Howard," I said, standing abruptly. "He's expecting you at the Prescott building at 4, Chloe replied, unsurprised by my reaction. The Prescott building, my grandfather's gleaming headquarters in the financial district. I'd passed it countless times, never imagining I had any connection to what happened inside. "I'll drive you," Chloe offered, standing as well. I hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." We rode in silence in her Range Rover, the leather seats a stark contrast to the crowded buses I usually took. Francisco slid by outside the tinted windows, a city I'd struggled to survive in while my inheritance gathered dust. The Prescott building lobby was all polished marble and soaring ceilings. The receptionist recognized Chloe immediately, but her eyes widened slightly when I gave my name. "Ms. Whitfield," she said, a new respect in her voice. "Mr. Dempsey is expecting you. 15th floor. In the elevator." Chloe squeezed my hand briefly. "Whatever you decide, I'm on your side." The gesture, small but sincere, nearly undid me. After years of believing I had no real allies in my family, the simple act of solidarity hit harder than expected. Howard Dempsey greeted us in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. My grandfather was there too, standing as we entered. "Lauren," Samuel said, his commanding presence softened by what looked like genuine regret. "Thank you for coming." I nodded stiffly, taking a seat at the massive table where documents were already spread out. "We've completed our initial audit," Howard explained, sliding folders toward me. These contain summaries of our findings regarding your trust, properties purchased with your funds, and investments made in your name without authorization. I opened the top folder, then closed it almost immediately as rows of numbers swam before my eyes. Just give me the bottom line. Howard exchanged a glance with my grandfather. The total amount misappropriated, including interest and projected returns, is approximately $12 million. The figure struck me like a physical blow. $12 million. A fortune that should have been mine, spent by the very people who watched me struggle year after year. And the offshore accounts? I asked, remembering Chloe's warning. Howard's expression darkened. We've identified transfers totaling nearly $2 million to accounts in Grand Cayman. We're working with authorities to freeze those assets as well. They were planning to run, I said flatly. Not a question. It appears so, Howard confirmed, which brings us to the question of how you wish to proceed legally. All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I realized I held my parents' fate in my hands. A word from me could send them to prison for years. Another word could offer clemency they didn't deserve. I need to see them, I said finally. Before I decide anything, I need to hear what they have to say for themselves. The following day, I sat in my grandfather's study at his Nob Hill mansion, waiting. Samuel had arranged for my parents to meet me here, neutral territory, yet clearly displaying where power now resided. The room was everything you'd expect from a tech billionaire's home office. Rich mahogany paneling, leather-bound books, and a desk that probably cost more than everything I owned. Through the windows, San Francisco Bay glittered in the distance, container ships crawling across the horizon like toys. Can I get you anything else? Samuel's housekeeper asked, having already brought me water and coffee. No, thank you, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded and withdrew, closing the heavy doors behind her. Alone again, I paced the perimeter of the room, fingers trailing across book spines and picture frames. I paused at a photograph I'd never seen before. A much younger Samuel holding a toddler with unmistakable reddish blonde hair, me. We were in what appeared to be a garden, sunlight casting dappled shadows across our faces. I was laughing, reaching for something out of frame, while my grandfather watched me, with evident adoration. That was your second birthday, Samuel's voice said from the doorway. The last time I saw you regularly before your parents moved to Chicago for those 3 years. I turned, the photo still in my hand. I don't remember this. You were very young, he said, moving to stand beside me. When they returned to California, things had changed. Susan insisted on more distance. From family money, said she wanted you raised with normal values. A bitter laugh escaped me. While they helped themselves to that family money behind your back. Samuel took the photo gently, replacing it on the shelf. They're here. Security just cleared them through the gate. My heart began to race. Despite everything I'd learned, despite the evidence of their betrayal, these were still the people who had raised me. The conflicting emotions, rage, heartbreak, confusion, made it hard to breathe. Do you want me to stay? My grandfather asked. I shook my head. No. This needs to be between us. He nodded, his expression grim. If you need anything, I'll be in the library down the hall. After he left, I positioned myself behind the massive desk, a deliberate choice. When my parents entered, they would face me across this symbol of authority and wealth. No longer their struggling daughter, but someone with the power to determine their future. The door opened and they stepped inside. My mother entered first, her usual perfect appearance marred by dark circles under her eyes and hair that lacked its customary polish. My father followed, his posture stiff, jaw set in the expression I recognized from childhood disagreements, the look that said he was prepared to defend his position, regardless of evidence to the contrary. Lauren, my mother began, moving forward with arms outstretched. Sit down, I said quietly, not rising to meet her. They exchanged glances before taking the chairs opposite the desk. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. We want to explain, my father finally said, his businessman voice firmly in place. Explain theft? Fraud? I kept my tone even. Explain watching your only daughter work herself sick to make rent while you vacationed in Europe using her money? My mother flinched. It wasn't like that, sweetheart. We were protecting you. From what exactly? Financial security? Independence? The ability to see a dentist when I needed one? From becoming entitled, my father countered. From losing your drive, your work ethic. Look at your cousin. Don't. I cut him off sharply. Don't bring Chloe into this. This isn't about her. It's about you stealing millions of dollars that were legally mine. We were managing it for you, he insisted. Making investments in properties for yourselves, in accounts under your names. I opened one of Howard's folders. The Tahoe house, the cars, the art collection. Were these investments for my benefit too? My mother began to cry silently, tears tracking down her cheeks. We meant to tell you, to transfer everything properly when the time was right. When? When grandfather died and couldn't ask questions? I leaned forward. Or were you just planning to disappear to the Cayman Islands with what was left? My father's face hardened. That money was for emergencies. Like the emergency of being caught stealing from your daughter? I laughed without humor. Howard's team has already frozen those accounts. That money's coming back to me too. You have no idea what you're doing, my father said, anger finally breaking through his composed facade. The legal implications are that you committed multiple felonies. I finished for him. Wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. Howard explained it all quite thoroughly. My mother reached across the desk, her manicured hand trembling. Lauren, please. We're still your parents. We love you. The declaration hung in the air between us, at once true and false. They were my parents. In their own distorted way, perhaps they did love me. But love shouldn't steal your future. Shouldn't watch you suffer unnecessarily. If you loved me, I said slowly, how could you let me live like I did? Knowing what you were keeping from me? My father's shoulders sagged, defeat replacing defensiveness. It started small, just borrowing against the trust for the down payment on the Palo Alto house. We intended to pay it back before you ever knew. But then there were other opportunities, my mother continued. Investments your father couldn't pass up. The market was booming. We thought we could double the money, replace what we'd taken, and still have more for all of us. And when that didn't happen, I prompted. My father stared at his hands. We were in too deep. If we told you then, we'd have lost everything. So I lost everything instead, I said quietly. My security, my opportunities, years of my life spent struggling needlessly. They had no answer for that. I closed the folder and stood, suddenly weary of the conversation. Howard has prepared papers for you to sign. Full admission of what you took, agreement to return, all assets purchased with my money, and a structured repayment plan for what can't be recovered directly. And if we refuse? My father's lawyer instincts surfaced. Then I press criminal charges and you face the possibility of prison. I met his gaze steadily. Your choice. My mother gasped. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I leaned against the desk. You're not the only ones who've changed, Mom. The daughter you knew a week ago might have protected you at any cost. But that was before I understood what you took from me. Not just money, but dignity. Peace of mind. The chance to build my life without constant fear of financial ruin. I moved toward the door, suddenly needing to end this conversation. Howard will be here in 30 minutes with the paperwork. I suggest you read it carefully and make your decision. Lauren, wait, my father called. What about us? Our relationship? I paused, hand on the doorknob. I don't know. I honestly don't know if I can ever trust you again. We're still family, my mother pleaded. Family doesn't do what you did, I said simply. Family protects each other. You only protected yourselves. I left them there, closing the door firmly behind me. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, letting out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Samuel appeared from the library, concern etched on his face. Are you all right? No, I admitted, but I will be. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Whatever happens next, you won't face it alone. Not anymore. The promise, simple but profound, eased something tight in my chest. After years of struggling solo, the idea of having genuine support felt foreign but desperately needed. They have a choice to make, I said, straightening my shoulders. And so do I. As we walked toward the library to wait for Howard's arrival, I realized the confrontation had changed something fundamental inside me. The anger remained, hot and justified, but alongside it grew something unexpected, a sense of power I'd never known before. For the first time in my adult life, I was in control of my destiny, not desperately reacting to circumstances beyond my influence. Whatever came next would be on my terms, not theirs. And that, perhaps, was worth more than any inheritance. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I stood in the foyer of an apartment I supposedly owned, keys clutched tightly in my hand. The Pacific Heights property, my property, had been legally returned to me after my parents signed Howard's settlement agreement. They had chosen cooperation over prosecution, though I suspected it was fear rather than remorse that drove their decision. "It's beautiful," Olivia whispered beside me, taking in the soaring ceilings, the wall of windows overlooking the bay, the gleaming hardwood floors. "It's surreal," I corrected, still unable to fully process that this place, this gorgeous, spacious apartment in one of San Francisco's most prestigious neighborhoods, was mine. We wandered through the rooms, 3 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a chef's kitchen with marble countertops, a dining room that could seat 12 comfortably. The master suite featured a walk-in closet larger than my entire bedroom in our shared apartment. "So," Olivia said, perching on the window seat in what would be my bedroom, "are you moving in?" I ran my hand along the wall, feeling the texture of expensive paint. "I don't know. It feels tainted somehow, like I'm benefiting from their betrayal." "Lauren," she said firmly, "this was always yours. They were the ones benefiting from betrayal. You're just reclaiming what should have been yours all along." She was right, of course. Still, the apartment represented a life I had never prepared for, a level of wealth and privilege that felt foreign after years of carefully budgeting every dollar. "There's another option," I said, an idea forming. "We could both move in. You've supported me through everything. I want you to share this with me, at least until I figure out what I'm doing long term." Olivia's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I couldn't." "You could," I insisted. "You should. Think of all the times you covered my share of rent when clients paid late, all the meals you made when I was working through the night. You're the reason I survived, Liv." She looked around the space, clearly tempted. "What about rent? I can't afford anything close to market value for a place like this." "It's paid for," I said simply. "Grandfather settled the property taxes and HOA fees for the next 5 years as part of making amends. You'd just cover your own expenses and maybe help with utilities." "That's incredibly generous." I smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. "That's friendship." The decision to move in together marked my first real step toward embracing my new reality, rather than simply reacting to it. Over the next few days, we packed our modest belongings from the old apartment and settled into spaces that seemed designed for people with far more possessions than either of us owned. My grandfather, eager to make amends for his years of absence, offered to help furnish the apartment. I accepted with one condition. I would choose everything myself. "I need to make this place mine," I explained during lunch at his club. "Not anyone's vision of what an heiress should have." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, though I hope you'll let me contribute the art. I've collected pieces over the years I thought you might appreciate." The offer touched me. I'd like that. Our relationship was evolving cautiously. Samuel was not an emotionally demonstrative man, but his actions spoke of genuine remorse and a desire to rebuild our connection. Weekly lunches became our tradition, conversations that started awkwardly but gradually eased into something resembling comfortable familiarity. During one such lunch, he surprised me with a proposition. "I'd like you to consider joining Prescott Ventures," he said, watching me carefully over his glasses. "Not as a favor or obligation, but because I've seen your design portfolio. Your eye for visual communication is exceptional." I set down my fork. "You've seen my work?" "Howard gathered samples while investigating your financial situation, your freelance projects, your agency contributions." He leaned forward slightly. "We're launching 3 new companies next quarter. They'll need complete brand identities. I believe you could lead that effort." The offer was tempting, a chance to work on significant projects with resources I'd never had access to before. But uncertainty nagged at me. "Would I be getting this opportunity if I weren't your granddaughter?" "No," he answered honestly. "But not for the reason you think. If you weren't my granddaughter, I wouldn't have seen your work at all. The opportunity comes from your talent, Lauren. The introduction comes from our relationship." I considered his words. "I need to think about it." "Take all the time you need," he said easily. "The position will remain open." As I navigated my new financial reality, other changes unfolded. The Nexus digital creative director, who had postponed our meeting weeks earlier, suddenly reached out with renewed interest. Coincidentally, after the San Francisco Business Chronicle ran a small piece about Samuel Prescott reconnecting with his granddaughter, graphic designer Lauren Whitfield. I took the meeting but declined their offer. Something about the timing felt opportunistic, and for the first time in my life, I could afford to be selective about my work. My parents remained a complicated absence. The settlement agreement included a non-disclosure clause. They couldn't discuss the situation publicly, and in return, I wouldn't press criminal charges. They'd moved to a modest rental in Sacramento. Their assets either returned to me or liquidated to begin repayment of what couldn't be directly recovered. My mother texted, occasionally, brief messages expressing remorse, asking when we might talk. I rarely responded, not yet ready to rebuild that bridge. 6 weeks after moving into the Pacific Heights apartment, I was working at my new desk when Olivia burst through the door, still wearing her hospital scrubs. "You got mail," she announced, dropping an official-looking envelope on my desk. "From the California Medical Board." I stared at it, pulse quickening. Weeks earlier, after reviewing my restored finances with Howard, I'd applied to settle my outstanding medical school loans, only to discover they'd been paid in full 3 years ago. Further investigation revealed my parents had used my trust to pay off their own medical school debts while leaving mine untouched. With Howard's help, I'd filed a complaint with the medical board regarding my father's ethical violations. As a prominent physician, he had leveraged my inheritance to clear his debts while watching me struggle with my own. "Open it," Olivia urged, perching on the edge of my desk. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. The letter was brief but decisive. The board had reviewed my complaint and supporting evidence. My father was summoned to a disciplinary hearing that could result in suspension of his medical license. "Is this what you wanted?" Olivia asked quietly. I refolded the letter carefully. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because what he did was wrong. Not just as my father, but as a doctor. He violated ethical standards that exist to protect people. She nodded, understanding. "What happens now?" "Now?" I looked around the sunlit apartment, at the space I was gradually making my own, at the design projects spread across my desk, work I had chosen because it interested me, not because I desperately needed the income. Now I keep moving forward. That evening, Chloe came over with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. Our unexpected friendship had deepened over the weeks. Mutual recognition of the complicated dynamics that had shaped both our lives, creating a bond neither of us had anticipated. "I saw the medical board letter," she said, helping herself to pad Thai. "Dad mentioned Uncle Daniel called him in a panic." "I'm not withdrawing the complaint," I said firmly. "Nor should you." She passed me a container of green curry. "Actions have consequences. That's what they always told us, right?" I nodded, a weight lifting at her understanding. "Right. Speaking of consequences," she continued, "Grandfather mentioned you haven't given him an answer about Prescott Ventures. I'm still thinking about it." Chloe studied me over her wine glass. "You're afraid people will think you got the position because of your name, wouldn't they?" "Maybe initially," she conceded. "But that only matters if you let it define you. I fought the same battle when I joined the investment team 3 years ago." I looked at her in surprise. "You work for Grandfather? I thought that I just shopped and attended charity galas?" She laughed without bitterness. "That's what your parents wanted you to think. They worked hard to keep us separate, Lauren. I've been managing a portfolio at Prescott Ventures since I finished my MBA. The revelation shifted something in my perception of her, of my entire family narrative. They really distorted everything, didn't they?" I said softly. "They needed to justify taking what was yours," she replied. "That meant painting me as frivolous and Grandfather as distant and uncaring. Neither was true." I leaned back on the sofa, processing this new perspective. "I've spent my whole life believing a story that wasn't real. So write a new one," Chloe said simply. "That's the beauty of discovering the truth. You get to start fresh, create your own narrative." Her words resonated deeply. For weeks, I'd been reacting to revelations, addressing the past's injustices. Perhaps it was time to focus on building the future instead. "I'll take the position," I told my grandfather the following Monday, "but with conditions." We sat in his office at Prescott Ventures, 60 floors above San Francisco. The city spread below us like a living map. Samuel raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering across his normally stern features. "I'm listening. I want creative control over the projects," I said. "Final approval rights on designs. And I want to build my own team." He nodded, unsurprised. "Reasonable requests. And I want Olivia offered a position in the medical technology division." This was the request that mattered most. "She's brilliant. Works miracles in the ER with outdated equipment. Imagine what she could do helping design better medical devices." Samuel studied me for a moment. "You care about her." "She's the family I chose," I said simply. The one person who stood by me when I had nothing. I'll have HR contact her today, he agreed, though I suspect you may have already discussed this possibility with her. I smiled. She's interested if the offer's right. It will be. He leaned back in his chair. Anything else? I hesitated, then pushed forward. I want to establish a scholarship fund for design students from low-income backgrounds, using part of my trust. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. Done. Howard can set up the structure immediately. The ease of his agreement emboldened me to continue. And I want your help setting up an accountability system for my finances. I never want to be in the dark about my own money again. Wise, he acknowledged. Financial literacy is a gift your parents deliberately withheld from you. We'll arrange weekly sessions with our top financial advisors until you're comfortable. With negotiations complete, I signed the employment contract he slid across the desk. Director of Creative Services at Prescott Ventures. A position created for me, yes, but one I was determined to prove I deserved. That night, I called a number I'd been avoiding for weeks. Lauren? My mother's voice, hopeful and hesitant. I'm so glad you called. I'm not ready to see you, I said without preamble. Or Dad. But I wanted you to know I've taken a position with Grandfather. Silence stretched across the line. Then, that's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm also establishing a scholarship for students who struggle financially. I continued. Something good should come from all this. Lauren, we're so sorry. I know. I cut her off, not ready for another apology. But sorry doesn't erase years of lies. It doesn't undo watching me struggle while you lived off money that was meant for me. We made terrible mistakes, she admitted quietly. Yes, you did. I took a deep breath. Dad's medical board hearing is next month. I won't be withdrawing my complaint. She didn't argue, which surprised me. He understands. He's been seeing a therapist. We both have. The information caught me off guard. My father had always dismissed therapy as excuses for poor choices. That he would voluntarily seek help suggested a level of self-reflection I hadn't expected. That's good, I managed. I hope it helps. Will we ever be able to repair our relationship? She asked, vulnerability raw in her voice. I closed my eyes, fighting the conflicting emotions her question triggered. I don't know, Mom. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. You had years to tell me the truth, and you chose not to. Every single day. I understand, she whispered. But we'll wait, Lauren. However long it takes. After ending the call, I walked to the window of my apartment, looking out, at the lights of San Francisco. The city looked different now. Not a place of constant financial struggle, but one of possibility and new beginnings. My first weeks at Prescott Ventures passed in a blur of creativity and learning. The resources at my disposal were beyond anything I'd experienced in my freelance career. A team of talented designers eager for direction, technology that streamlined our workflow, and clients who respected our expertise rather than demanding endless revisions to justify their fees. I threw myself into creating brand identities for my grandfather's new ventures. A sustainable energy startup, a biotech firm developing affordable medications, and an education technology platform. The work consumed me in the best possible way, channeling my emotional energy into something productive and meaningful. Olivia thrived in her new role as well, her practical hospital experience proving invaluable to engineers who designed medical equipment but rarely used it in high-pressure situations. The lead developer actually thanked me for pointing out flaws in the interface. She marveled over dinner one evening. Do you know how many times I reported issues with hospital equipment only to be told I was using it wrong? Things change when people actually listen to you, I agreed, thinking of my own experience in the workplace. My personal life was evolving too. With financial security came a freedom I'd never known. Not just material comfort, but mental space to consider what I truly wanted beyond mere survival. I began therapy, working through the complex emotions surrounding my parents' betrayal and my grandfather's renewed presence in my life. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with during my years of constant work. I even started dating again, accepting an invitation from a software engineer I met through one of our client projects. You seem happier, Chloe observed during one of our now regular Sunday brunches. More settled. I am, I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. Though I still have moments where none of this feels real. Like, I'll wake up back in my old apartment, counting pennies until payday. That's normal, she assured me. When your reality changes dramatically, your mind needs time to catch up. 3 months into my new position, I was preparing for a major presentation when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. My father had suffered a heart attack. He was stable but hospitalized in Sacramento. I sat at my desk, staring at the message slip, unsure how to respond. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the years of unnecessary struggle, he was still my father. The man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had cheered at my college graduation, who had, in his deeply flawed way, believed he was protecting me from the dangers of privilege. Without overthinking, I called my grandfather. "I need to go to Sacramento," I said when he answered. "Dad's in the hospital. I'll have the helicopter ready in 30 minutes." He replied without hesitation. "Do you want me to come with you?" The offer, simple but profound in its implication of support, nearly brought me to tears. "No," I said finally. "This is something I need to do alone." 2 hours later, I stood outside my father's hospital room, gathering courage. Through the small window in the door, I could see him, diminished somehow, hooked to monitors, my mother holding his hand. They looked older than I remembered, the weight of consequences evident in the new lines on their faces. I pushed open the door. "Lauren!" My mother rose, disbelief and hope warring in her expression. My father turned toward me, his eyes widening. "You came," he whispered, voice weak. "I came," I agreed, remaining by the door. An awkward silence fell. 3 people with too much history and hurt between them, none sure how to bridge the chasm. "The doctors say it was stress," my mother finally offered. "They're monitoring him, but he should recover fully with medication and lifestyle changes." I nodded, moving slightly closer to the bed. "Good." My father reached out a tentative hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, feeling the papery texture of his skin, the weakness in his grip. "I'm sorry," he said, tears gathering in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Lauren." For the first time, looking at him vulnerable and afraid, I believed him. Not enough to erase what had happened, but enough to open a door I had thought permanently closed. "I know," I said softly. "It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning." The winter fog rolled thick across San Francisco Bay as I stood on the balcony of my Pacific Heights apartment, coffee warming my hands. 6 months had passed since my father's heart attack. 6 months of cautious reconciliation, of setting boundaries while leaving doors slightly ajar. "Beautiful morning," Olivia said, joining me with her own mug. Despite the fog, I nodded, appreciating the ethereal beauty of the city half-shrouded in mist. "There's something magical about it, the way it hides and reveals at the same time. Very philosophical for 7 a.m., she teased. I smiled, recognizing how much I'd changed. The Lauren of a year ago wouldn't have paused to appreciate fog. She'd have been rushing to catch a bus, worried about being late to a client meeting, calculating how the day's work would translate to that month's rent. "Dad's moving back to the city next week," I said, the words still strange in my mouth. He accepted a teaching position at UCSF Medical. After his heart attack and subsequent recovery, my father had faced the medical board hearing with unexpected humility. His license wasn't revoked, but the suspension and probation terms had effectively ended his private practice. The teaching position represented a fresh start, lower pressure, lower pay, but a chance to rebuild his professional integrity. "How do you feel about having them close again?" Olivia asked carefully. I considered the question, watching a container ship emerge from the fog. Cautiously optimistic. We've all changed. The transformation in my parents had been the most surprising element of the past months. Stripped of wealth and status, they'd been forced to reevaluate priorities that had guided their lives for decades. Weekly therapy, both individual and as a couple, had helped them recognize patterns that led to their betrayal. My mother had returned to nursing, taking a position at a community clinic that served low-income residents. The woman who once insisted on designer labels now wore scrubs and comfortable shoes, finding purpose in work that directly helped others. Our relationship remained fragile, but healing. Monthly dinners had become our ritual. Neutral territory, public restaurants where conversations stayed civil and focused on rebuilding trust rather than rehashing past hurts. "They're coming to the gala tomorrow night," I continued, referring to the Prescott Foundation's annual fundraiser. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "Bold move. Are you sure you're ready for that?" "Grandfather issued the invitation," I explained. "Said it was time to present a unified family front. Besides, they'll be at my table, not his." The Prescott Foundation Gala had taken on new significance this year. As the newly appointed creative director for the foundation, I'd overseen the rebranding that would be unveiled at the event, my most public professional achievement since joining Prescott Ventures. "Speaking of the gala," Olivia said, glancing at her watch, We should get moving if we want to do that final walkthrough at the venue. Inside, I changed into work attire, no longer the carefully maintained second-hand pieces of my struggling days, but thoughtfully selected items that reflected my personal style rather than financial limitations. The woman who stared back from the mirror looked confident, well-rested, purposeful, almost unrecognizable from the exhausted designer of a year ago. At the Four Seasons, where the gala would be held, I reviewed final details with the event coordinator. The ballroom was being transformed according to my vision, organic elements juxtaposed with technology, reflecting the foundation's new focus on sustainable innovation. "Ms. Whitfield," the coordinator called, "your grandfather just arrived." Samuel Prescott entered with his usual commanding presence, but his expression softened when he saw me. Our relationship had evolved into something I'd never expected, a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. "The space looks remarkable," he said, surveying the ballroom. "You've captured exactly what we discussed." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the compliment without the self-doubt that would have plagued me months earlier. The interactive displays for the scholarship program will be installed this afternoon. The Lauren Whitfield Design Scholarship had become my passion project, a program that supported young designers from disadvantaged backgrounds with not just tuition, but living expenses, mentorship, and guaranteed internships. The first cohort of 10 students had been selected, and they would be introduced at tomorrow's gala. "I've reviewed their portfolios," Samuel commented as we walked through the space. "Impressive talent. You've chosen well." "They remind me of myself," I admitted. "So much potential, just needing the right opportunity." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can offer others is what we ourselves were denied. The observation resonated deeply. Through all the pain and betrayal, I'd discovered a purpose that transcended my personal hurt, creating pathways for others that hadn't existed for me. Later that evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Chloe arrived at my apartment with a garment bag and a bottle of champagne. "Pre-gala tradition," she explained, hanging the bag carefully on my closet door. Though usually I do this with my stylist, not family. The ease with which she referred to me as family still surprised me sometimes. Our childhood rivalry, manufactured largely by my parents' distortions, had transformed into a genuine bond. "What's in the bag?" I asked, eyeing it curiously. "Open it," she urged, popping the champagne cork. Inside was a gown that took my breath away. Deep, emerald silk that would complement my red hair perfectly, with architectural details that spoke to my design sensibilities. "Chloe, it's stunning, but—" "Before you protest," she interrupted, handing me a glass. "This isn't charity or showing off. It's a thank you." "For what?" She settled onto my sofa, suddenly serious. "For changing us, all of us. Grandfather is more human than I've ever seen. Him. My parents actually ask about my work now, not just my dating life. And me?" She smiled. "I finally have the cousin I always wanted but was told didn't want me." Emotion tightened my throat. "I didn't do anything extraordinary." "You did," she insisted. "You chose dignity over vengeance, healing over hatred. Do you realize how rare that is? You had every right to destroy them, my aunt and uncle, but instead, you gave them a chance to become better people." I joined her on the sofa, considering her words. It wasn't entirely altruistic. Hatred is exhausting. I was tired of carrying it. "That's wisdom, not weakness," she said, raising her glass. "To the woman who showed us all a better way." We clinked glasses, the moment unexpectedly profound. The pain hadn't disappeared. Perhaps it never would entirely, but it had transformed into something constructive, even beautiful. That night, after Chloe left, I called my parents. "We're looking forward to tomorrow," my mother said, nervous excitement in her voice. "It means a lot that you'll be there," I told her, surprising myself with the sincerity of the statement. "Lauren," my father's voice joined the call. "We know this is a big, night for your career. Thank you for including us." The gratitude in his voice, once so assured and occasionally condescending, reflected how completely our dynamics had shifted. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said softly. "Even us." As I ended the call, I realized the truth in my words. My parents deserved their second chance at being better people, and I deserved my second chance at a life, unencumbered by their deception, a life built on truth, purpose, and the genuine connections that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. Tomorrow's gala wasn't just a professional milestone. It represented the completion of a personal transformation. from struggling designer to creative director, from betrayed daughter to architect of reconciliation, from victim to victor. Not through revenge, but through reclaiming my power to write my own story. The Prescott Foundation Gala glittered with San Francisco's elite, tech innovators, venture capitalists, philanthropists, and cultural luminaries gathered in the transformed ballroom of the Four Seasons. As I moved through the crowd in my emerald gown, accepting congratulations on the foundation's striking rebrand, I couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically my life had changed in 1 year. Last December, I'd been working overtime on freelance projects, hoping to afford a modest Christmas gift for Olivia. Now, I stood at the center of one of the city's most prestigious events. My work prominently displayed, my name spoken with respect rather than pity. "There she is," a familiar voice called. My grandfather approached with the mayor of San Francisco at his side. "Mayor Chen, this is my granddaughter Lauren Whitfield, the creative force behind everything you see tonight." "Impressive work," the mayor said, shaking my hand. "The integration of sustainability themes throughout the design elements is particularly striking." "Thank you," I replied, no longer surprised when my contributions were recognized by people in positions of power. It reflects the foundation's commitment to solutions that benefit both communities and the environment. As they moved on to greet other guests, I caught sight of Olivia across the room, stunning in a midnight blue gown, deep in conversation with the chief of surgery from her hospital. Her medical technology innovations at Prescott Ventures had earned her recognition within the healthcare community, opening doors that had once seemed permanently closed. My parents entered the ballroom, and I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. Not the sharp pain of betrayal anymore, but a complex mix of memories and cautious hope. They looked different now, humbler, less polished, but somehow more genuine. My father had lost weight since his heart attack. My mother had let her hair return to its natural color, silver strands catching the light as she moved. They spotted me and approached hesitantly, respect for my boundaries evident in their careful smiles. "This is remarkable, Lauren," my mother said, gesturing to the space around us. "You've created something truly beautiful." "The scholarship program displays are over there," I said, pointing toward an interactive wall, where guests could learn about the students and their work. "You should take a look." My father nodded. "We will. But first," he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small envelope. "We wanted to give you this before the formalities begin." I accepted it warily, old instincts still occasionally surfacing despite months of rebuilding trust. "It's not a gift," he clarified, reading my hesitation. "It's a final accounting." Inside the envelope was a bank statement and a letter from their attorney. They had sold their remaining personal assets, jewelry, artwork, my father's rare book collection, and added the proceeds to the restitution fund established through Howard's settlement agreement. "It's the last of it," my mother explained quietly. "Everything we kept from you has been returned or accounted for." The gesture struck me deeply, not because of the monetary value, which was relatively small compared to what had already been restored, but because of what it represented. They had finally and completely prioritized repairing the damage they'd caused over their own comfort or possessions. "Thank you," I said simply. My father's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We're so proud of you, Lauren. Not because of all this," he gestured to the opulent surroundings, "but because of who you've become despite what we did." Before I could respond, the event coordinator appeared at my elbow. "Ms. Whitfield, we're ready for you on stage." I excused myself, moving toward the podium where my grandfather waited to begin the evening's formal program. As I climbed the steps to the stage, I caught sight of familiar faces throughout the room. Chloe giving me a thumbs up from her table, Howard Dempsey nodding in approval, my scholarship recipients, wide-eyed in their first formal attire, clustered near the front, and my parents, standing respectfully at the back, no longer central to my story but still part of it. Samuel welcomed the crowd, his commanding voice filling the space without need of amplification. After acknowledging major donors and community partners, he introduced me with evident pride. The Prescott Foundation enters its next chapter under the creative guidance of my granddaughter, Lauren Whitfield. Her vision has not only transformed our visual identity, but has deepened our commitment to creating opportunity for those who, like Lauren herself once did, must overcome significant obstacles to realize their potential. Applause rippled through the ballroom as I took his place at the microphone. Looking out at the assembled guests, people who a year ago would have intimidated me with their wealth and influence, I felt a calm confidence that came not from my restored financial status, but from something far more valuable: the knowledge of my own resilience. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. The Prescott Foundation has always supported innovation and excellence. Tonight, we expand that mission to ensure talent isn't overlooked, simply because of circumstance. I gestured toward the scholarship recipients. These 10 remarkable young designers represent the future of creative problem-solving in our community. Their journeys, like mine, haven't been straightforward. They've faced financial hardship, lack of resources, and systems that weren't designed with them in mind. My eyes found my parents in the crowd. But they've persevered. They've maintained their dignity and vision against significant odds. And now, with the right support, they'll contribute perspectives and solutions that might otherwise have been lost. The speech continued with details about the Foundation's initiatives and partnerships, but the heart of my message remained the same. True wealth wasn't measured in accounts or assets, but in the ability to transform difficulty into purpose. After the formalities concluded and dinner was served, I circulated among the tables, connecting donors with scholarship recipients, facilitating the relationships that would sustain the program beyond its initial funding. As the evening drew to a close, my grandfather found me near the dessert station. "Your grandmother would have been proud," he said, the rare mention of his late wife catching me by surprise. She always said true character reveals itself not in how we handle success, but in how we respond to betrayal. I wish I'd known her, I replied, touched by the comparison. "You're like her in many ways," he continued. "She believed in second chances too. Gave me one when I nearly lost everything in the early days of the company." This was a story I'd never heard, a glimpse of vulnerability from a man known for his unshakable confidence. "What happened?" I asked. "A poor decision nearly bankrupted us. I was young, arrogant, thought I knew better than everyone else." His eyes took on a distant look. "She could have left. Many advised her to. Instead, she stayed, helped me rebuild. Said she'd married me for more than my success or failure. The parallel to my own journey wasn't lost on me. That's why you didn't push me to press charges against my parents." He nodded. "Some lessons can only be learned through consequences, but some healing can only happen through mercy. Finding the balance, that's wisdom." As the last guest departed and the cleanup began, I found myself alone on the balcony overlooking the city lights. San Francisco sparkled below, the fog having lifted to reveal a clear December night. Footsteps approached behind me, and Olivia joined me at the railing. "Some night, huh?" she said, bumping my shoulder gently with hers. I smiled. "Hard to believe where we were this time last year. You in your third day of ramen noodles, me covering your half of the electric bill." She shook her head. "And now look at you, creative director, philanthropist, wearing a dress that probably costs more than my car." "We both landed on our feet," I corrected her. "Your medical device patents are worth more than this dress." She laughed, then grew serious. "Are you happy, Lauren? Really happy?" I considered the question, looking out at the city that had witnessed both my struggles and my transformation. "I am," I realized, "not because of the money or the position, but because I know who I am now, who I've always been beneath the financial stress and family lies, and I like her." "I've always liked her," Olivia said loyally. We stood in comfortable silence, the moment perfect in its simplicity. Later that night, as I returned to my apartment, I found a small package outside my door. No card, but I recognized my mother's handwriting on the address label. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before. Me, at perhaps 4 years old, sitting at a child-sized desk, intensely focused on a drawing. My red hair was wild around my face, my expression one of complete absorption in the creative process. A note accompanied it. "You were an artist long before you had anything or nothing. We're sorry we ever made you doubt your worth. With love and profound respect for the woman you've become." I placed the photograph on my bedside table, a reminder that while betrayal had shaped part of my journey, it didn't define my story. The truth, painful as its revelation had been, had ultimately set me free. In the silence of my bedroom, I thought about the scholarship recipients whose lives would change because of opportunities I'd helped create. About my parents, humbled but healing, finding their way back to their authentic selves. About my grandfather, softened by regret, but energized by our renewed connection. About Chloe, Olivia, and the other genuine relationships that had flourished in the aftermath of deception. Money could be stolen, invested, multiplied, or lost. But dignity and truth, once claimed, could never be taken away. And in claiming mine, I'd discovered that the greatest inheritance wasn't in any trust fund or property deed. It was in the power to